Hello, my movie peeps. I just got done watching the latest sequel to The Meg. And with this movie entitled Meg 2: The Trench, we follow Jason Statham put on a path to fight again against some megalodons. Only this time, they're not necessarily the big threat of the movie and will be pushed off to the side for an espionage story about another crew doing nefarious stuff in the trench. And that's all. Pretty much any spoilers to you guys. This will be a spoiler-free review, although I don't know how I can really spoil shark eat people. But let's talk about dang shark movies, man, because I think that's one of the most wild subgenres to exist out there. They've literally done it all, to where there's a ghost shark, or a shark that swims in sand, and the infamous shark tornado. Yeah, Jaws will always probably be the best shark movie that started this trend, but I've always had a guilty pleasure love for Deep Blue Sea, okay? That is kind of my go-to shark movie, before they just got flat out weird, ridiculous, and were being made with pennies. So when that first Meg movie came out, and they kind of got rid of the horror element and not try to focus, on shark eating people, and more, it's a big blockbuster, it's a big budget action movie. It was alright. There was entertainment to be had in it. I mean, who wasn't intrigued with the idea of Jason Statham punching a shark in the face? We've all wanted to punch a shark, I think. So then that brings us into the Meg 2, and I was surprised to find out this is an entire book series. There's like 5 or 6 of these things. And they're quite popular too. I'm like, what's going down in these books that make it quite popular? Is it some 50 Shades stuff with the sharks? Is it, a Jacob or an Edward situation? Is a shark choosing between an octopus and a penguin? I might read 6 pages of that. But I think the Meg 2 gives you an idea of what the book series is kind of about, and how they push the sharks off to the side for human characters, and maybe not always being that interesting. Now, I do want to say, I'm not going to try and shame you or make you feel bad if you walked into the Meg 2 and walked out happy with the movie. There's definitely some entertaining moments to be had in here. I mean, I, for one, will always watch a Jason Statham movie. I wish he would kind of go back to his earlier action films, things like Crank or The Transporter. Specifically, even like in Crank, where he was just a wild, goofy man, but those films were like action-packed fun. There's also other fun characters thrown in there. I was really getting a kick out of Wu Jing. I actually ended up liking him as much as Jason Statham. I thought he was kind of fun to watch. I'm glad they brought back Paige Kennedy in here as the character of DJ. He got a couple of laughs out of me. I do also want to praise the visual effects of these sharks, because I think they actually look pretty dang good. I always thought a heavy CGI shark movie just wouldn't be that suspenseful, because your eyes can just obviously tell that's an effect, that's a graphic, it's not real. But you know what? There were moments in this movie where I was like, dang, if I was in the ocean and that big giant shark was staring at me the way it is now, I would crap my pants. There's some good close-up shots of like the eyes and the gills, or just some scars that the sharks would have from previous battles, and I'm like, this looks pretty darn great. But I think sadly that's just kind of where my positives end for it here, because the rest of it kind of surprised me with the twists and turns it was taking. Because I feel like the Meg movies are obviously Fast and Furious of shark films, okay? They're the movies that you would actually find like Sharktopus or Mega Shark versus Big Octopus. These films have that same quality. The only difference is the budget. They have the money to make it actually look great, but it was more the way they went about the shark stuff, because I was like, as long as you give me a shark eating people and that type of suspense, even if it defies all logic, like Jason Statham on a jet ski with a couple of spears on his back just fighting these megalodons off, yeah, it's not realistic or believable, but that's kind of the fun of watching a megalodon just eat some beachgoers at a beach. But all of that is really pushed off to the side, and the movie treats the sharks as like the minimal threat of the film. I'm not kidding. There's about like 2, 3, maybe even 4 other major villains before the sharks actually become a threat in this movie. And I say threat loosely because they end up feeling more like an annoyance of like, oh, the sharks got out. All right, let's take care of this, guys. Oh, we also got a couple of other soldiers shooting at us with bullets, so we might focus in on that too. And I felt like that was just kind of the disappointing part of it, because I wasn't that interested in this made-up story of a facility wanting to like research on megalodons. Not sure how they're making their money back on that, but there's a subplot on trying to train a megalodon, and we've seen how that goes in Hollywood, trying to train prehistoric creatures. I'm sure that's going to end up great. Then you have this villain thrown in that has a history with Jason Statham's character, and they become a large focus of trying to go after him. I will give them props for like some of the underwater stuff did kind of have me in suspense. I don't know if that's just because of recent events with a certain submarine that imploded, but having that event in the back of my mind and then seeing these people in submarines going to the depths of the ocean, things cracking, and we get a head implosion scene in here. Would have looked so gnarly if this movie was rated R, but it was a very censored implosion. Some of those underwater sequences had me kind of gripped and interested. It felt like a fun little horror movie for a bit before we got to the big blockbuster action stuff. stuff. But it was just that, you know, it's this crew versus that crew, and there's a mole in here, and there's someone betraying and feeding information, and now we have a couple of fight scenes with humans just going at it, and the whole time you're like, when we get into big sharks. It just wasn't that interesting. I'm sure that's like the interesting stuff in the book, and it can probably come off a lot more interesting because the book has the freedom to flesh out those characters, flesh out those backstories, those interconnections, and still make it work within the shark attacking people. But I think in this movie that was already running over its 2-hour runtime, people are only really there for one thing. You buy your ticket to see a Meg eat people, and well, you do get that towards the end. It's kind of fun. They throw in an octopus, a couple of other prehistoric creatures in there. Yes, logic and physics go completely out the window, but I think the annoying part I found about it is like there's one scene in here with like the Megs are now at the beach. People are getting eaten. There's also a giant octopus attacking people, bringing down a helicopter. Let's focus. Oh, we're going to watch Jason Statham have a gunfight with this guy while literally the Megs and all that is happening behind them. And I feel like that picture is the perfect explanation for the Meg 2. It's like, there's this awesome, crazy nonsense we could give you, but don't you want to see someone try to shoot Jason Statham? I don't think we've ever seen that before. So yeah, I didn't have as much cheesy, dumb, turn off my brain kind of fun like I did with the first movie. When it gets to the actual sea creatures becoming the threat of the film, going after people, you know, the suspenseful moments of like, oh, you're in the water, it's about to get you. Yeah, that's when I was like, oh, sat up in my seat. But then, you know, the other large percentage of it where we're watching just random scientists argue with each other, who's betraying us, who's doing this, it just wasn't that interesting. So I'm going to be curious if even people who enjoyed the first movie maybe don't like this movie as much. Because clearly, if you weren't a fan of the first film, Meg 2 isn't going to change your mind at all. But I'm not going to lie, even with me being kind of meh on this movie, if they got 5 books, I'm so curious where the story at all goes with those other books. What other crazy, wild, $1,000,000 situations can you put these sharks in with other people? You know what, I'd watch a third one, I'm not gonna lie. So for the Meg 2, I'm gonna give action 3 stars here. Most of the shark mayhem you're gonna get is towards the last 20 minutes of the movie. Before that, it's a lot of typical generic action that you've seen, you know, some hand-to-hand combat that is very shaky, quickly edited. Comedy in the movie, I'm gonna give it 2.5 stars. I think most of the time you'll be laughing at this movie is with something unintentionally there, when the dialogue is really bad or when characters do something outrageously dumb. Some of the purposeful jokes really will not land, but there's like a cheesy sense of humor to it. Drama in the movie, I'm gonna give it 2 stars. Just was really not into the story they were telling in here. I couldn't get invested or care at all about these 2 different crews or what illegal activities going on in the trench and who's betraying who. I'm sure that stuff maybe comes off a lot more interesting in the book, but here in movie form, it just wasn't doing anything for me, and I was just more wanting to see how they would explain sharks attacking people at a beach again. Horror in the film, I'll give 1.5 star too. Like I said, I'm someone that fears the depths of the ocean. So with the CGI actually being pretty cool on the sharks, yeah, it was kind of scary seeing them there, but nothing too crazy. It's still PG-13 and censored down. Suspense the movie, I'll give 2 stars too. I think that's mainly towards the sequences of them in the submarines going to the bottoms of the ocean, them running out of air, all this stuff. Maybe it is because of recent events, but just knowing how scary that is, it kind of put me on the edge of my seat just a little bit. Casual fans into the Meg world, I'm gonna give it a B-. Cinephiles, I'm gonna give it a C-, and critically, I'm going to give it an F. Yeah, I think the movie still has entertaining moments, and it's always fun to see $1,000,000 worth of effects go into sharks eating people, but in the end, I feel it's something you can wait to watch at home.
That'll do, Donkey. That'll do.
Again, that's just my opinion on the Meg movie. If you're someone that did like this movie, not shaming you at all, that's awesome. Although I was kind of meh on this one, I do like watching Jason Statham punch sharks. Let me know your guys' opinions on the Meg 2 and what you thought about this movie, where you lie on it. Don't forget to like, subscribe, follow me on Twitter at 3C Films or on TikTok at 3C Films. But as always, I'm Chris. Take care.